Hey everybody, Steve Hupp here, Practice Director for Field Service at Thunder, with another SFS tip where I take a question from one of the communities and dive into Salesforce and attempt to build out a solution or a foundation of a solution, post back my results and in the hopes of both helping the original poster as well as anyone else who might be having similar questions or similar issues along the same lines. Today's question, I was really excited about it because it's something I hadn't really gone in and tested within Salesforce, but it seemed to me to be a valid use case, and I was actually surprised I hadn't come across it more. The use case was all around the holding of inventory, and what was really meant by that was, when you're doing things like transferring inventory, doing product requests and transfers and things like that, the one thing that kind of gets overlooked a little bit, in my opinion, is if you're looking at a location and you're looking at the inventory items, there could be like 5, 6, 7 pending product requests that are associated to those items, which means that, some of those items technically may be spoken for. So you may be looking at this list of inventory as, say, an inventory manager, trying to make decisions around how much inventory you have, or if you're going to order more, things like that. And it may not be a true reflective number, just because there could be a bunch of pending requests and things like that. And the reason for that, for anybody who's not familiar, is the inventory doesn't actually get updated until the transfer itself is executed, right? So either the technician receives that transfer, and as soon as it's marked as received, then the inventory officially moves from one place to another, and then the transactions get created, which then will adjust the inventory levels. So again, very interesting use case because it made sense. The idea that you could have this this product items that a bunch of it or all of it could be spoken for already, and then you're trying to decide as an inventory manager how much you have. So that's kind of what I aim to go in and kind of solve for, and I'll dive into Salesforce here, and I will walk you through the solution that I put together and see where we end up. All right, so as I mentioned, it all starts with the location. So this is kind of my Ohana West location. Here's all my product items here. And so again, just to restate, the whole notion was around, if I'm looking at all of these items, right, take the power inverter, for example, I see I have 31 of them, but there is no way for me to tell if 18 of them are already spoken for because you've got 4 or 5 product requests out there that just haven't been picked up yet. The technicians just haven't gone and gotten the inventory. So I kind of went, the path of least resistance here. And so what I did was I set up a holding location. And just like the name implies, the whole purpose of this location is strictly to be a go-between. So it's a place where, once I create the product request and then I'm going to allocate the inventory, I'm actually going to move the inventory from the original source location of Ohana West into a holding location, which will then affect the inventory levels of Ohana West. And then the technician will then be able to either receive or cancel that product request in order to then either take that inventory back into the trunk or into their trunk stock, or we'll be able to return that inventory to the source location, which is a very important aspect, right? Because I wanted to build that piece out. I wanted to be able to say, well, what happens if the technician says, nope, I don't need this anymore? We obviously then have to take that inventory that's already been removed from the source location and effectively put it back so we can keep the inventory levels, at the accurate levels, the inventory levels accurate. So, I've got my inventory location here for holding. Again, for those of you who probably aren't familiar with me yet, I love flow. I build flows out for everything. So that's what I did, right? I got my holding location and I went to build the flow. The flow is going to look really, kind of big and scary, but in reality, it's just because I had to do a lot of assignments and things. But I've got 2 primary flows here. The first one is all about, we'll drive it off of the product request. And so the whole purpose of it is it'll actually go through the request line items, and then it's going to create 2 transfers per line item as it goes through. And the reason why it's going to do that is because I needed 1 transfer to represent the movement of the inventory from the source location into the holding location. And then I also needed another transfer to represent the final, stop, you could call it, from the holding location to the technician's trunk stop. So I'm going to go through, go through the request line items. I'm going to create the transfers. I'm going to mark the ones as received that'll move it from the source into the holding. And then I'll have some pending ones for from the holding location to the technician location. So that's kind of the first flow that I did. The second one is really just based off of the technician, just either receiving that product request or canceling that product request based off of them being in the mobile and being in the field and going through their day-to-day and determining either A, yes, I'm going to go pick that up and now I need to receive it, or B, I've determined that I don't need that product request anymore and I can now cancel that, which then will just give the inventory back to the original source location. So that's it. So those are the two flows that I built. So if I go back here, I pre-created 2 product requests just so I could be able to simulate both of those actions out in mobile, which we'll get to here in a second. So the first one here, we can see that, we've got Ohana West as the source location. We've got Alan Reed's van as the destination location. And if we go over to the related list, we can see we've got 2 product request line items, connector cables, power inverter. And we've got different quantities for those. My second product request, again, very similar, going from Ohana West to Alan Reed's van. The only difference here is I've got 2 different request line items in the mounting system and the fuses. So I'm going to go back to my first product request here. And so this is going to kick off my first flow. I embedded it into an action that I can put up here that is basically allocate request. And so the whole workflow in my mind was, if I'm an inventory manager and I'm building out this product request, I've now added my line items. So I'm going to go ahead and officially allocate this inventory, right? So I'm going to go to allocate. My flow is going to kick off in the background. It's going to run through the request line items. It's going to tell me that the transfers have been created. And so now once this executes and it refreshes here, we're going to be able to see our product transfers. So here's the 2 that have already been, processed, you could call it, in taking the inventory from Ohana West into the holding location. And then I've got 2 others that are pending that are representing from the holding location to the technician. And if I go back to my holding location, and I look at the related list and the product items, we'll now see that we have a power inverter and connector cables. So this is great, right? We have now officially been able to allocate inventory, even though it hasn't been picked up yet by the technician. We've been able to successfully, mark down that inventory is spoken for. And if I go back to my Ohana West location and I dive into my power inverter, for example, we'll be able to go in here and see those transactions down there at the bottom where we were able to now transfer 5 of those, right? So all is working completely as intended at this point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same exact thing for my next product request. I'm not going to go through the whole talk track here, just because I want to be able to do it very quickly, and then I want to get out to the mobile. But again, created my product request. If I go down here, I see my product transfers. All of those are pending here, and so now I'm ready to go into to the mobile application. So for those of you who aren't familiar, in the mobile application, there's a dedicated inventory tab. So within this inventory tab, I can see all of my pieces of inventory that are associated to me, my trunk stock that I have through the location that is tied to me. We also have the ability to review product requests and then also product transfers. Now, this is something key to note, and the way that I set this up kind of aligns or does align to the non-serialized inventory. And so for those of you who are familiar, serialized inventory makes this a little bit easier because I don't have to create a product transfer for every single item. There's a serialized product related list that's associated with the product item that I didn't build out here, but I do very confident that I could build that out to align to that use case. But in this case, I just stuck to the non-serialized inventory. And so what you'll see is that, this does create kind of a pain point, because if I wanted to go and receive each one of these transfers, I would have to do these one at a time. Because with non-serialized inventory today, if I have 2 items associated in my product request, I have to create a transfer for each one of those items in order to effectively move the inventory. So instead of doing that, what I did was I just put a simple quick action on the product request itself. So if I go down to all product requests, and I'm going to page down, and I've got my 2 down here. So this is 7 and 8, which are the 2 that I created. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into 7. So we can see here's the product request. We can see we've got the connector cables and the power inverter that are associated to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to say, yep, I'm picking this one up. So I'm going to update the status. We'll mark that as received and save. And then what we're going to do is if we go back to our product items, what we're going to see is now our connector cables and our power inverters have been updated. Right, so again, doing exactly what we wanted to do. So instead of having to go through each one of those transfers, I was able to just go to the product request, and I was able to receive that product request as a whole. And then my automation kicked off to say, yep, Steve did pick this up, or Alan Reed, in this case, did pick this up. So we're going to go ahead and move that inventory from the holding location over to Alan Reed's van. And case in point, if I go back to my location here, my holding location, and I open up my related list, and I hit refresh, right, what we're going to see is Oh, the power inverter and connector cables. So see, those have been moved down to 0, right? So now the quantities have been updated. So now I can accurately see what's in holding, what's not in holding, what's been added to Alan Reed's van and past. Okay. All right, so now back in mobile, if I go back to the product request tab, now I'm going to go to the final product request. And again, this one too has got 2 product items associated to it, or 2 request line items associated to it. Now, in this case, let's just say that Alan Reed decides that he doesn't need this request, right? He made it, or he put in a case. The inventory manager created the product request, but he found some in his trunk that he didn't realize he had, or whatever the case may be. He now doesn't need this anymore. And so he's going to want to cancel this particular request. So again, just a simple quick action to update the status, right? So we're going to update this to canceled. I'm going to hit save. And now what we're going to see over on the desktop side here, if I go ahead and hit refresh, right? Now the fuses and the mounting system have been updated. So again, there's no more inventory now in this holding location. And if I go back to my Ohana West location and I go to my fuses, for example, what we're going to see is we see that that's been updated by 4, and we can see there that product transfer has been executed. So again, what just happened was by canceling that request, my flow actually went and looked at the transfers that were taking inventory from the holding location to Allen and actually updated that destination location to Ohana West, because that was the original source of where the inventory came from, and then just executed upon those transfers, right? And just received those to ensure that the inventory got moved. And I thought that was very important because I wanted to line to out of the box how the product item transactions get created, receiving those transfers, right? Even though it was through automation, I wanted to make sure to align it. So that's it. Again, I was really excited to go in and test this, and just to summarize, the whole purpose of going through and building this was to create a holding type location where inventory could be moved from one location to another and kind of be spoken for, allocated, even if the technicians are in process of picking that up. And so it could be an accurate depiction of the inventory levels in a given location. So I appreciate watching the video. As always, if there's anything that myself or Thunder can do for your field service implementation, please feel free to reach out and let me know. So until next time, thanks so much.